Hi everyone, my name is Lydia and thank you so much for clicking on this video. If you are interested in true crime like I am, I invite you to click subscribe and come back for more true crime stories. Hello to my returning subscribers, I am so happy to have you here. And I apologize in advance if this video turns out to be low quality. It seems that the longer the video I make, the more trouble my old iMovie software has in exporting it. So sorry about that. I hope to be upgrading in the next couple months. Today I'll be talking about a case from 2013 in Kaufman County, Texas. It's a story about small-town politics, revenge, and a lawyer who thought he was smarter than everyone else. This is the case of Eric Williams, a lawyer who was out for deadly revenge. Let's begin. My sources for this true crime case are linked in the description box below. They include an excellent book titled In Plain Sight by Catherine Casey. In my telling of this case, I mean no disrespect to any of the persons mentioned, and as always, it is my intention to relay this information for educational purposes and to give a voice to the voiceless. Viewer discretion is advised, and I'll give my thoughts on this case at the end of this video, so stay tuned. The small city of Kaufman is located in dead center of Kaufman County, which is a rural area outside of Dallas, Texas. The city's population totaled around 6,700 in the year 2010 census. Overall, it is a friendly and quiet area made up mostly of farms and ranches. The Kaufman County Courthouse is located in the center of town, and it serves the area's residents with 2 district judges and 4 justices of the peace. And it is in fair Kaufman County where we lay our scene, from ancient grudge break to new mutiny, where civil blood makes civil hands unclean. Kaufman County Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse grew up in Dallas, Texas, and had a normal childhood. He loved flying and he earned his pilot's license when he was only in high school. Mark attended Texas A&M University, where he majored in history. When he graduated, he worked for an airplane manufacturer, and the owner of that company was so impressed by Mark's intellect, he suggested that Mark attend law school, promising a position in the company's legal program once he graduated. So that's what Mark did. He attended Southern Methodist University for law school, graduating with honors. However, he ended up taking a different position when he graduated, working as a junior prosecutor for a Dallas district attorney. Quickly, he was promoted to bigger and bigger cases, and eventually he moved on to private practice. Mark still enjoyed his hobby of flying, and eventually he bought his own airplane. On one solo flight in 1995, his plane crashed, and though Mark miraculously survived, he suffered grievous injuries. He was left with a fractured skull, memory loss, and permanent loss of smell. And after he recovered, he took a break from being a lawyer and continued with his love of airplanes. He would buy them, repair them, and then sell them for a profit. 14 years would pass, and Mark had decided that he had healed enough and he had recovered enough, and he wanted to return to his love of law. He decided he would restart his legal career. Mark settled on a spot in the district attorney's office of Kaufman County. Mark liked the rural community, which usually meant that there was less big crime and a slower pace than what he had seen in Dallas. However, Mark would never realize that he himself would become a victim of big crime in Kaufman County. But before we talk about what happened to Mark, we first have to talk about the perpetrator of these crimes to come, Eric Williams. Eric Lyle Williams was born in 1967 to loving parents and raised on a farm outside of Fort Worth, Texas. A younger sister would join the family, making it a family of 4. As a young boy, Eric was taught the importance of civic duty. Eric was a happy child. He would escape into his imagination all the time. He was quiet, he loved to read, he loved to study. He was bright and inquisitive. He did not like doing those farm chores that were expected of him. He was also interested in technology before his peers were, and he was the first among his friends to own a computer. His friends would later say that he was never a people person. He was smart, he was quiet, he was calm, but he always kept to himself. And he never seemed to get angry. He always kept his feelings in. They would even describe him as rather aloof. He liked the perception that everyone had of him, that he was smart and he was a bit of a nerd. He even took to carrying around a briefcase at school. Eric enjoyed Boy Scouts, eventually graduating to the rank of Eagle Scout, and his Scout leaders always thought Eric was a very conscientious boy. In school, Eric played the trumpet in the marching band, and he also competed on the school's math team. Eric and his friends grew up in the 1980s, and one of the popular activities for some groups of boys in the 1980s was the popular board game Dungeons & Dragons, a role-playing game in which each player would be sent on an imagined adventure filled with heroes and dragons and witches. Eric's friends would always want him on their team because Eric was known to be a strategic thinker and he had always been good at planning. Of course, growing up as a boy in Texas, that usually meant that you would have some sort of familiarity with guns, and Eric was no exception. His father owned guns, he taught Eric how to shoot, and Eric enjoyed collecting them as well. Eric and his friends would often go target shooting with their BB guns. And also, disturbingly, sometimes he would hunt the small kittens and cats that had been left abandoned and had wandered onto his family's property. Eric worked at a nearby lake resort in the summers, and he loved the power that it gave him. He would enforce the rules and keep the visitors in line. Eric loved that power. Eric graduated from high school in 1985, and he attended Texas Christian University in Fort Worth, Texas, which was close to his home. He had earned a chemistry scholarship, and once there he joined the ROTC, the Reserve Officers Training Corps, and he considered having a military career. He had switched his major from chemistry to criminal justice, and he planned to be a military police officer. He graduated 4 years later, and he immediately set off for Army Camp in Kansas. He received a diploma qualifying him to be a military police officer, but he never quite earned a spot, and that dream was squashed. Instead, Eric took a police officer job in Fort Worth, which was in his home area. After a short time, however, Eric was actually fired from that position because he was caught calling in sick to work when he actually was not sick. So he moved on to another police department about an hour and a half away. Soon after that job started, he actually got in trouble again. This time he had logged onto the computer in the police department, and he had logged himself patrolling during some hours in which he actually was not doing his work. Eric was now 24 years old, and already he had failed to be a military police officer, and he had been fired from 2 police officer jobs. So Eric needed a fresh start, and he moved with his friend Paul to Kaufman County, Texas. While there, Eric decided to study for the LSAT, or the LSAT. Eric wanted to go to law school. However, Eric also needed a job, and in March 1994, he landed a position in the Kaufman County Courthouse as a court coordinator for Judge Glenn Ashworth. Among Eric's duties were managing the judge's schedule, setting the trial dates, and working with the lawyers who would appear before the judge. He also monitored the courtroom, where he would be seen standing by, quietly observing everything going on. Soon, Eric was given the extra duty of being an unpaid reserve officer in the district attorney's office. Eric liked having a badge and a gun. He liked being seen as if he was in power. And a concerning incident would occur after Eric had received those privileges. Eric had been dating a woman casually, and she had broke it off a few months after they had started to date. When she did, Eric kind of stalked her. He approached her one night and showed her his gun, saying that if she walked away, he would use that gun because he had nothing else to live for. And the woman immediately filed a report with the police. But Eric's boss, Judge Ashworth, saved Eric, vouching for him and assuring the woman that he would keep Eric in line and he would never do something like that again. Thankfully, he left the woman alone. However, I don't think that the judge did the correct thing in that circumstance. This was a warning sign, and it showed disturbing behavior on the part of Eric Williams. He was a bit of a loose cannon. Meanwhile, Eric had been studying for the law school entrance exam. He passed it with flying colors, and at the age of 28 in 1995, he entered law school at Texas Wesleyan University in Fort Worth. Eric kept his job while in law school, working for Judge Ashworth, and the two had formed a close relationship. The judge welcomed Eric into his personal social circles, which was full of people in powerful positions in Kaufman County. And by this time, Eric had also met another woman. This time he had met her online, and her name was Kim Johnson. Kim Johnson grew up in a middle-class family in Dallas, Texas. She had an older brother, and her father owned an elevator repair company. Kim was petite and blonde with big blue eyes. In high school, she joined the marching band, and she also joined the high school drill team. She was a pretty girl, and she always had attention from the boys. In 1985, Kim graduated from high school, and she attended a junior college. After that, she moved on to enroll in Southern Methodist University in Dallas, majoring in English. Not long afterward, she transferred to the University of Texas in Arlington and switched her major to teaching. But after a bit, she realized that college was not the right fit for her, and she decided to find a job instead. Eventually, she landed a job as a clerk in the hospital. In her free time, Kim would spend hours online while she was at home. It was 1996 and the early days of internet message boards, and on one of those internet message boards, she met a man named Eric. She considered him smart and funny, and they got along well. They started emailing back and forth, and eventually they met in person. They had already developed a strong bond before they met, so when they met face-to-face, their relationship quickly became more serious. Kim and Eric would go to Las Vegas to get married in 1998. Life was good for the couple, and they envisioned a long and happy life together. At the time, Eric was looking forward to graduation from law school as well. And when Eric graduated, his friend Judge Ashworth was in attendance looking on with pride. Eric took the state bar exam, and while he waited for the results, he took a job at a local law firm which had an office located right across from Kaufman County Courthouse. And soon, Eric Williams was a full-fledged lawyer with a calendar full of court-appointed clients. And he was getting his assignments from his friend, Judge Ashworth. Soon, Eric decided to concentrate on cases that fell under CPS, Child Protective Services. He liked the perceived power and the additional influential duties that the job would bring. He had also begun to operate out of his own private law office, and he had separated from the firm from where he had started. During this time period when Eric's legal career was taking off, Kim suffered a setback. She discovered that she had developed rheumatoid arthritis, making it very painful to function in an everyday capacity. She was given a prescription for a painkiller to help ease the pain. She also developed another condition that went along with the arthritis, and Kim was soon having pain-filled days, which would cause her to be more and more dependent on the painkillers. 3 years into their marriage, Kim was forced to leave her job as a clerk at the local hospital and apply for disability benefits. She began taking an increasing amount of painkillers, some days being completely confined to her bed. She would spend her time at home taking care of the couple's beloved Pomeranian dogs. Eric, however, was doing well financially, and the couple was able to move into a large 3-bedroom home very near to where Judge Ashworth lived. Eric would indulge in his hobby of collecting computer gear and firearms, and Eric and Kim bought new cars as well. In 2002, Judge Ashworth announced his retirement, and Eric's days of collecting the easy assignments that he would receive from the judge were now numbered. Eric loved any opportunity he had to put on a law enforcement uniform, and he continued to pick up unpaid reserve positions, including a new one in 2006, when he became an unpaid reserve deputy in the sheriff's department. That position meant that he could act as security at the local events in the community. Over the next couple years, Eric's colleagues and friends would notice that he had changed. He was becoming angrier. He had problems with coworkers, more than he had had in the past, and he sometimes spoke with threatening language as well. He would remain hyper-focused on every case he had, and he believed that it was going to be his way or no way. Eric considered the Kaufman County Courthouse his realm, and anything that happened inside it, he wanted to have a say on it. In their personal life, Eric and Kim were struggling. There had been a time when Eric considered divorcing Kim, but Kim had asked him to stay, and they decided to stay together. However, Kim would remain suspicious that Eric had been having an affair. Kim's use of painkillers and alcohol to cope with the pain that she had increased, and both she and Eric would notice erratic behavior from each other. It was not a good time period in their lives. Kim would notice that Eric was collecting more and more guns, and he was also collecting large amounts of cash and leaving it in the house. His behavior was becoming more and more concerning. He would be angry at her, their neighbors, and anyone who crossed him. With Kim's mind in a state of painkiller fog most days, she just let it go. In addition to his other duties at the courthouse, Eric managed the law library as well. Of course, the term law library didn't really mean what it sounded like. It was really just a quiet place for lawyers to do their work and prepare their documents. The problem was that the law library had no Wi-Fi, and that had become an increasing need at the time. The entire courthouse, in fact, lacked good internet service. The law library had a fund which could be used for improvements, and Eric managed that fund. He had used some of the money to buy a new computer for the law library. He had also on his own purchased a new router, which made internet available in the law library room for the very first time. Eric's steady stream of CPS case assignments continued, and he was making a substantial amount of income. By this time, he was one of the county's highest paid attorneys. In 2008, that changed. Eric Williams was caught overbilling for his services on the CPS case assignments, and one of the county judges admonished him for it. For instance, Eric had charged for extra time making phone calls or for reading paperwork when in fact it had not taken that much time to complete. This had been going on for a while, and Eric did not have a good excuse for the excessive charges. It wasn't a huge amount, but a little here and there would certainly add up over time. As a result of that, Eric was given less CPS case assignments, which meant that his paycheck would go down a bit. He was making less money. However, he and Kim would spend too much money. Kim would buy clothes that sat in her closet with the tags still on them, and Eric would buy new computer things, and he even purchased a Segway, which he enjoyed riding around the neighborhood and also riding to work. Eric would look for other ways to remain a powerful person in Kaufman County. He signed up for the Texas State Guard, a militia group which would help out in natural disasters. Eric considered it a chance to be part of a military group, like he was before he had been passed over as a military police officer. He became a dedicated member of the Texas State Guard, eventually earning the rank of captain, and those who knew him in the Guard would always refer to Eric as Captain Williams. Eric continued to unleash his well-known anger when anyone crossed him professionally. It was not unusual if he was overheard threatening someone's life if they made him angry. Although to most people at the time, they just thought Eric was a hothead who liked blowing off steam. They would see later that they had been wrong. A couple of years passed, and in 2010, Eric decided to run for public office, campaigning for one of the 4 Justices of the Peace positions in Kaufman County. Eric campaigned hard, spending many hours knocking on the doors of residents in the county. However, one person who did not support him was his old friend and mentor, Judge Ashworth. Eric Williams' hard work paid off, and he won the election. Another person had entered the 2010 race as well, although for a different position in the county. Lawyer Mike McClelland was running for the second time for the district attorney's office. His first run for the job had been unsuccessful, and one of the reasons for his loss was Eric Williams. Michael Elgin McClelland was born in 1949 in a rural area south of Dallas to a hardworking couple who ran a 600-acre horse ranch. Mike and his first wife Pam married after graduation from high school. They moved to Austin, and Pam started working while Mike enrolled in the University of Texas. In 1970, their first child was born. Mike entered the Army, and over the next several years, the family moved around to different bases throughout the country, eventually their family growing to include 3 children. Mike had also slowly earned a master's degree in psychology, and he had transferred to the Army Reserves, trading in military life to become a psychologist for the state of Texas. However, Pam and Mike's marriage had crumbled, and after 11 years of marriage, they divorced. Mike moved to Dallas, where he met his second wife, Patricia. They married in 1983, and in 1990, Mike decided to go to law school. After a break in 1992, during which Mike served his country in the Gulf War, he was back on track with his legal studies and back to his career goals, even though his second marriage had now become strained. Mike had met another woman who would later become his third wife, and Mike and Patricia divorced in 1994. The woman who would become Mike's third wife was Cynthia Woodward. years older than Mike, Cynthia Woodward was born in Oklahoma and grew up in a family of 5 children. Their family had moved to Dallas, Texas when Cynthia was 9 years old. She enjoyed being at home and helping to bake and cook for her family. In 1969, Cynthia graduated from college with a degree in psychology, and she married her high school sweetheart, Jerry Foreman. Jerry worked as a contractor, and Cynthia would earn her master's degree in psychology. They decided to move to a commune in Illinois, where up to 200 families lived and worked together, combining their resources. Even in later life, Cynthia would continue to have New Age beliefs and practices, a remnant of her time living in the commune in a kind of a hippie lifestyle. In 1972, Cynthia and Jerry's son was born, and in 1984 they would add to their family with an adopted baby girl. And the family moved to Dallas, Texas. In 1990, Cynthia was working for the state of Texas as a psychologist supervisor. It was the same office where Mike McClelland also worked. There they met, and both would say later that they had both felt that their lives would be forever entwined. In 1994, Cynthia and her husband Jerry divorced after 25 years of marriage. In 1994, Mike McClelland had completed law school and he had taken the bar exam. He had a goal of being a judge or a district attorney. He had also moved in with Cynthia at this point, and together they moved to Corpus Christi, Texas. Mike began working as a private lawyer in all types of cases, including divorces and estate planning. He took court appointments as well, including mental health cases, which made sense because he had the psychology background. In 1995, Mike and Cynthia married. In 2001, after Cynthia had graduated college with yet another degree, this time a degree in nursing, the couple moved back to the Dallas area, eventually buying a home outside of Dallas in Kaufman County. Cynthia worked at a nearby state hospital where she supervised the care of women in a mental health ward. Michael and Cynthia were a loving couple. They enjoyed family and friends, and they enjoyed church activities at the local Methodist church. However, not long after they moved into their new home, Cynthia discovered that she had developed Parkinson's, a disease which caused her hands to shake and would eventually progress throughout her entire body. In 2002, Mike McClelland crossed paths with Eric Williams. Mike was then working for the state of Texas, working as a regional attorney handling CPS cases. And when he ended up overseeing a case that was in the Kaufman County Courthouse, Eric and Mike would butt heads. Mike saw Eric as unqualified for his job, and Eric saw Mike as a fraud. Of course, Eric never seemed to have a lot of respect for anyone. He always seemed to be looking down on people, considering himself intellectually superior in most cases. The two men clashed mostly because of their individual strong opinions. They each believed themselves to be the correct and right one. Just like Eric in the past, Mike McClelland at the time was doing something he should not have been doing. In addition to his work with the state of Texas, he was also continuing to practice private law, taking on work as a defense attorney, which was really against the rules. Eric had been among people who had pointed this fact out, and from then on, Eric and Mike disliked each other even more. In the fall of 2005, Mike McClelland ran for district attorney office in Kaufman County. Eric Williams had written a letter in the newspaper speaking out against Mike. Their bad blood situation continued. Mike lost the campaign by a narrow margin, and he likely blamed Eric Williams for some of that loss. After the loss in that campaign, Mike got a new job as an attorney in the mental health department of the Dallas County Public Defender's Office, and he wasn't quite finished with his dream of being a district attorney. In 2010, an opportunity arose for Mike to run for district attorney again. This time around, he was successful, and he had won one of the 2 district attorney seats in Kaufman County. There, Mike found a friend in Mark Hasse, a prosecutor in the office at the time. The two became close friends, and they would both regret crossing paths with Eric Williams. At first, however, all seemed relatively calm as Eric settled into his new position as Justice of the Peace and Mike settled into his position as District Attorney. Both brand new jobs were centered around the Kaufman County Courthouse. In 2010, Kim Williams was fully dependent on the painkillers she took for her arthritis and her other medical conditions. She was unable to work for the most part, bound to the house except for when she went to her parents' house. Her and Eric's marriage continued to decline as well. He was distant and she was constantly ill. However, the two continued to spend their free time together as they individually sat playing video games. One of the online games that they both enjoyed playing was Mafia Wars. And Kim also played several of the other popular online games at the time, including Farmville, Petville, and Vampire Wars. Eric's new job as Justice of the Peace was located in Kaufman County's sub-courthouse. Eric had great new plans for his office. He planned to upgrade the computer system, installing software which would allow for internet conferencing, and the Justice of the Peace the ability to communicate with inmates and lawyers online instead of visiting the jail in person. And he enjoyed wearing the long black judicial robes as he presided over his small claims court cases. He corrected people when they would call him Eric by accident, reminding them that it was now Judge Williams. It was another power trip for Eric and another uniform to wear, and he loved it. Eric started running his office a little fast and loose. Without going through the proper channels and notifying the county, Eric began making purchases for his office. He just simply saw no reason to ask for permission. He was even sidestepping the county's own IT department. Most notably, Eric wanted to upgrade the law library, and he took it upon himself to do the updating. He wanted to add video conferencing, and he was Justice of the Peace after all. Who was going to stop him? In May 2011, only 4 months into his new job, Eric began taking items from the IT department storage room. Security cameras would reveal his actions, and as his behavior was noticed, the IT department installed security cameras inside the storage room as well. The security footage would reveal Eric taking 3 monitors from the storage room, loading 2 of them into his car. He also took a laser printer cartridge, which he had given to his secretary who needed one, and he had also carried out a police scanner. The IT department personnel took the footage to the sheriff's department, and the sheriff was also a friend of Eric's. Although the value of the 3 monitors was a small amount, and really it was only 1 monitor that was missing, the other 2 were in the courthouse, it was still stealing, and something had to be done about it. Judge Eric Williams was met in his office on May 24, 2011, and he was arrested, put in handcuffs, and brought to the sheriff's office. He was under arrest for theft. The sheriff had a search warrant, and they set about searching Eric's office for the missing computer equipment. The 1 monitor was found on his desk, the other monitor was found in his car, the 3rd monitor was missing, and the police scanner was also found in the courthouse. Interestingly, when they searched Eric's car for the monitor, they also found a large amount of guns. Apparently, Eric was traveling around with guns all the time. In his car, there were 5 handguns and 1 AR-15. I mean, this is Texas, but that's a lot of guns. In Eric's closet at work, they also found more guns, handguns, and rifles. Eric was interviewed by the sheriff, and he was questioned as to where that missing monitor was, and Eric did not have a good answer for that. In actuality, what Eric had done was to call Kim at their home, letting her know that she should move the monitor that was in their house to her parents' house. So when the sheriff went to Eric's house with the search warrant, he found no monitor there. The word going around the Kaufman County Courthouse about Eric's arrest for a $200 monitor was mostly political. Eric had not supported Mike McClellan in his district office races, and he bore a grudge against Eric. And others in the courthouse just simply didn't like Eric Williams. Overall, it did seem like a reach for this serious theft arrest for a relatively minor offense of stealing a $200 monitor. Everyone knew that Eric was in the process of setting up video conferencing in his office, and they knew that that's what the monitors were being used for. One had simply ended up in his house. In the DA's office, though, they were taking this case seriously, and the lawyer who was pursuing the case was Assistant District Attorney Mark Hasse. And Mark Hasse had never liked Eric. As much as Eric thought this problem would go away, and as some in the courthouse would think that the DA's office was being overzealous, Eric's situation just kept getting more and more serious. Eric was suspended without pay for his job as Justice of the Peace, and he was also removed from active duty in the Texas National Guard, a job which Eric loved. Prosecutor Mark Hasse offered Eric the opportunity to plead guilty in the case, which would mean that Eric would lose his position as judge, but he would keep his law license. Otherwise, the state could push to have Eric's law license revoked if the case was to proceed into a trial. Eric would not plead guilty. He was willing to pay restitution, and he was willing to leave his justice of the peace position, but he would not plead guilty. To Mark Hasse, now the gloves were off. Eric was going to be charged to the fullest extent he could be. The case had now elevated to felony burglary. It was a $200 monitor. The local law community mostly agreed in the opinion on this case. They thought that Mike Hasse was pursuing this case so strongly against Eric because number one, he didn't like him, and number two, it was a favor to his friend, the district attorney Mike McClelland, who also didn't like Eric. However much the case against Eric was thought to be personal or political, the evidence in the case had started to pile up. Eric's prior management of the law library was also brought into question. Eric had had oversight of the law library fund, which totaled $300,000. And looking back through the record, it seemed as if Eric had taken advantage of that money. He had ordered supplies for the law library that didn't quite seem to make sense to be in that room, including gaming earphones and special computer keyboards. Overall, it did not amount to much at all, but it was additional equipment that Eric had purchased with the funds that did not end up in the courthouse. And underneath all of the small-time theft, Mark Hasse and Mike McClelland both sensed that Eric Williams was unstable. He had a temper and plenty of guns that he could use if his temper boiled over. In a surprising move, Mike, the DA himself, decided to be second chair on the case, sitting next to his friend Mark Hasse, the prosecutor. It was actually Mike's first trial as DA, and he relished the experience. Now both men sitting on the prosecution side of the courtroom had personal and political reasons to defeat Eric Williams. Eric's theft trial began on March 19, 2012. Kim Williams would not attend. Although she was weak and she was tired, she could have made it there, but Eric told her to stay home, preferring that the court thought that she was housebound and too sick to get out of bed to come. The video evidence from the IT department, along with the list of items that Eric had supposedly purchased for the law library, was strong evidence. Eric's defense tried to put on a good opposition, but in the end they were unsuccessful. Eric Williams was found guilty by a jury of his peers after only 4 hours of deliberation. Eric Williams was furious. Waiting for his sentence to be revealed, Eric closed his private law practice. With his conviction of felony burglary, he would no longer be able to practice law. On June 9, 2012, Eric was brought to court for his sentencing. Kim Williams spoke on his behalf as a character witness, and she made a good effort to do so. The prosecutors argued that Eric be given the maximum 2-year prison sentence, as well as losing all his positions and his law license. However, the judge ruled that he would instead serve probation, do community service hours, and pay a fine. Even with no jail time, Eric Williams' career was over. And now he had plenty of time on his hands. Too much time. A lot of time to plan. When Eric was stripped of his positions and his law license, he and Kim had to dip into their savings to live. However, that was not a sustainable situation, and Eric was just growing angrier and angrier. He had also started the process of his appeal. Kim Williams would later say that Eric began to speak seriously about exacting revenge on the people he believed had wronged him, 6 months after his trial ended. It was fall of 2012, and Eric told Kim of his plans to kill the first person on his revenge list, his one-time friend and mentor, Judge Ashworth. He believed the judge had wronged him, and he would talk to Kim for weeks about his plans on how he could kill the judge. But strangely, he decided to abandon those plans and move on to another person. The person he would kill, he decided, was going to be Mark Hasse, the prosecutor who had made it his special mission to prosecute Eric Williams in the theft charge. And Eric needed Kim's help. Later, Kim would say that at first she ignored Eric's talk of his plans to murder someone, but eventually she became aware that Eric was indeed serious. And then she decided to change tactics, saying that Eric was going to be caught if he went through with his plans. But Eric thought himself too smart to be caught. This would be his ultimate power trip. In his mind, if he was successful in killing Mark Halsey and the district attorney Mike McClelland, other people would take over those jobs. His appeal would be successful, and he could get his job back as Justice of the Peace. He would get his law license back as well. It was fanciful thinking. Eric's plan was to ambush Mark Halsey in the parking lot where he parked his car before work, and he needed Kim's help in being the getaway driver. Kim was also angry at the people who had taken away Eric's job and his law license, because Kim was dependent on Eric after all for money. And at first she refused to help him in his plans, but then later Kim said that actually Eric had threatened both her and her parents, saying that he would kill them if she did not go along with his plans. Eric had also enlisted the help of a friend, a member of the Texas National Guard. Although this friend had no idea what he was doing for Eric, Eric asked him to help him rent a storage unit. Eric had made sure that this storage facility had no security cameras. And then Eric, once he had the unit, proceeded to fill it up with guns and supplies. Items that he gathered as supplies for his plans included a box of plastic shoe covers, clothes to wear to the ambush, including a bulletproof vest and a hood with a mesh covering the face, and then a larger purchase, a getaway car. He and Kim purchased an old car from a private seller for about $1,500. He parked it in the storage unit and he set the date of January 31st, 2013. Kim and Eric awoke early that morning, and with Kim driving, they rode in the getaway car to wait for Mark Halsey's arrival at work. And Eric carried out his plan exactly. A witness who was driving in her car past the parking lot at the same time as the murder would remember seeing Mark Halsey being confronted by a man covered head to toe in black, who confronted Mark, seemed to have words with him, shoved the gun in his neck, shot him, shoved him down again, and also shot him again as he lay on the ground. Another witness who reported seeing the shooting would say that he had witnessed the scene as well, and he had recalled the victim saying before he was shot that he was sorry. From the reports of the witnesses, it seemed that the two men had known each other. It was not a random incident. It was a targeted attack. The witnesses had also seen the shooter get in the car, which was being driven by another person, and the car had raced away from the scene. They said it was a light-colored sedan. Eric and Kim had then driven to their other car, which was stored in a nearby lot. They had driven the getaway car to the storage unit, left it there, and went home. Meanwhile, at the scene of the shooting, Mark Halsey was still alive, barely, and he was taken to the hospital. When the news of Mark's shooting reached the courthouse, the entire building was placed into lockdown. DA Mike McClelland went to the hospital as soon as he knew what had happened. When he arrived, he was informed that Mark Halsey was dead. Mark Halsey was 57 years old. His friend Mike immediately suspected Eric Williams. When the police went to Eric's house to question him about his whereabouts that morning, Eric greeted them at the door with his arm in a sling. When the officers asked him about his arm, Eric said that he had just recently had rotator cuff surgery. He said that he had just come home after picking up a prescription for his wife as well. The police asked for permission to swab Eric's hands for gunshot residue, which he agreed to. They also asked to search his home, to which he also agreed. The house was cluttered and messy, but there was no evidence that pointed to a murder plan. Kim had also retired to her bedroom by that point, and when the police arrived, she was sleeping. The word around the Kaufman County Courthouse was surely that Eric Williams had been involved in the murder of Mark Halsey. Some believed that Eric himself had done it, and some believed that Eric had hired someone to do it. But others would point to another list of possible suspects, one being the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas. In recent months, Mark Hasse and the DA's office had been loosely involved in the prosecution of a member of the white supremacist gang, the Aryan Brotherhood of Texas, and it became a large case and it had gathered a lot of publicity. And it quickly became a theory that was circulated in the media. The Aryan Brotherhood were the ones who had put out a hit on the assistant district attorney, all the reporters speculated. But the Kaufman County District Attorney Mike McClelland had his own theory about what had happened. And when he got on TV the day of the murder, he spoke into the camera as if he was speaking directly to Eric Williams, saying that they would find the person who had murdered Mark and that they would bring him to justice. Both Eric and Kim were watching from home. There were other groups and other people that it was possible had been targeting Mark Hasse as well. After all, he was a prosecutor in the county. But none of those other leads panned out. McClelland had recused himself from the investigation into Mark Hasse's murder, one because he was close to the murder victim, and also because he had done something he shouldn't have. He had taken Mark's personal gun and holster that he had been wearing on the day of the murder and had brought it to his house, thereby disrupting the chain of evidence. That fact could become a problem later on in the trial if he was to continue in the investigation of the murder. As far as other evidence in the case, there was really little to go on. Little physical evidence linked anyone at all to the murder of Mark Hasse. One positive lead in the investigation, that it was found that Eric had not had rotator cuff surgery. That had been the reason he was wearing the sling he had told the police the day of the murder. If Eric was proven to be lying, that could be a break in the case. Next, the investigators planned to interview Eric's family and friends, since Eric himself refused to be interviewed. At home, Eric was planning his next hit. One snag was that their getaway car had broken down. The used car's transmission had blown, and Eric dumped the car. So Eric and Kim bought another car from a private seller. This time, Eric wanted a retired police car, and they found an old Crown Victoria, or a Crown Vic, with tinted windows. Now Eric was planning the murder of Mike McClelland. He was planning to go to his house, and Eric told Kim that if Mike's wife was there, he would kill her too. To Eric's line of thinking, if that happened, it would look like the Aryan Brotherhood had struck again, going to the house of a prosecutor and killing his whole family. Later, Kim would say that she had refused to help Eric since he was planning to murder the prosecutor's wife, but eventually she had no choice but to help him. Eric planned the date of the next murder to take place on March 30th, 2013. It was the Saturday before Easter Sunday, and Eric knew from his experience that it was a day popular to the sheriff deputies for taking the day off. It was only 2 months after the murder of Mark Hasse. At home that Saturday morning before Easter, Eric and Kim woke early. They drove their car to the storage unit, pulled out the getaway car, the old Crown Vic, the retired police car. They parked Eric's car inside instead, and then they drove the car to Mike McClelland's neighborhood. Eric drove and Kim sat in the passenger seat. It was 7 a.m. when they arrived at Mike's house. This time, Eric was dressed in all black, in the uniform of a SWAT police officer. He wore a hood and goggles as well. Once there, Eric parked, got out of the car, walked up the path to the front door, and went inside. Kim waited in the car. Seconds later, Kim heard a round of gunshots, followed by a second round, and only a couple minutes later, Eric was running back to the car and getting into it. Eric informed Kim that both Mike and Cynthia were dead. Eric told Kim that Cynthia had opened the door, let Eric in, turned to go call for Mike, and he had shot her. And then he had shot Mike McClelland as well. This time they drove a different route back to the storage facility. They took their car out of the storage unit, they drove the getaway car in, lowered the door with Eric spraying it and cleaning it, and then they drove their car back to their own house. Eric had changed clothes inside the storage unit as well. Later on that Saturday before Easter, Kim and Eric would go to Kim's parents' house, cooking steaks on the grill and having a good time. Eric was in good spirits, laughing and joking. And after dinner, the couple would drive to a lake an hour north of Kaufman, where Kim had watched Eric throw a heavy black bag into the water. Meanwhile, at the McClellands' house, friends had noticed that Cynthia and Mike had been unavailable all that day. They finally went over to their house after attempts to reach them via their phone was unsuccessful. The friends went inside the house, and there they found Mike and Cynthia both dead. Mike was 63 years old and his wife Cynthia was 65 years old. Two prosecutors from the same small county in Texas had been shot within 2 months of each other. It was a big story, and the rest of the lawyers and staff working at the Kaufman County Courthouse wondered who would be next. On the way home from their quick trip to the lake where Eric had tossed the bag, the sheriff called Eric on his cell phone. He directed Eric and Kim to drive to a nearby restaurant where he would be immediately interviewed. Eric submitted to another gunshot residue test on his hands, and they also surrendered their cell phones. Unable to help himself in the days that followed, and after he had had a few beers, Eric emailed the Crime Stoppers tip line, volunteering the info on the type of gun and the bullets that had killed Mark Hasse. He wrote in his tip that he was demanding that the Kaufman County judge would immediately resign his position. By the next morning, Eric was sober and he regretted his actions, and he never emailed the Crime Stoppers tip line again. But his error would come back to haunt him. Of course, Eric Williams could not stop himself from relishing the spotlight. When the regional media outlets descended onto the Kaufman County Courthouse and in Eric's neighborhood, Eric could not help himself. He granted interviews in which he proclaimed his innocence, and he offered sympathy to the victims' families. One such bizarre interview was caught by TV cameras as Eric was riding on his Segway down his neighborhood street, his favorite method of transportation in his neighborhood and also to his office. Eric did not shy away from the attention, and soon he was being sought after for interviews by national news outlets. With the DA spot now open since Mike had been killed, the governor of Texas appointed Judge Wiley to fill that position. Little did Judge Wiley know that she was also a target of Eric Williams. She was on his hit list as well. She was directly under the next name on his list. The next name was Judge Ashworth. Eric Williams was running out of money fast. Most of their savings had been depleted, and with all the attention from news media and the attention from the law, Eric's attorneys were overwhelmed with Eric's case. They knew that Eric was unable to pay them, and so they withdrew from his case. The investigators sensed an opportunity to pounce, because they knew, at least for the moment, Eric Williams was without legal representation. They knew Eric was a smug and proud person, and they expected that he would relent to an interview. They took their chances and went to his house, asking to speak with him. And Eric said yes. Not only did he grant the interview, he also let the police officers inside his house. It was going to be a mistake. The investigators saw an empty gun box in the house, which matched the same gun that was used in the murder of Mark Hasse. They also found other gun parts and accessories throughout the house, including a gun scope and night vision goggles. And they found multiple empty phone boxes, which led them to believe that Eric Williams owned several mobile phones. After the interview and after the police left his house, Eric must have felt spooked because, as it was observed by a police officer down the street, immediately afterward, Eric brought boxes out from the house to his car, and he drove them to Kim's parents' house. The police had found something else at Eric's house, and this was a major break in the case. On a piece of paper they found the Crime Stoppers tip line written down, and next to the number was a series of letters and numbers. They figured out that that series of letters and numbers matched the number of the tip. It identified the tip that Eric had submitted, the email that had told the investigators that the person who submitted the tip knew the type of gun and the type of bullets that were used in the murder of Mark Hasse. No one but the killer would have known that information. That paper with that tip number had been found in Eric's house. That meant that the tip had been submitted by either Eric or Kim Williams. Another bombshell piece of evidence was found in Kim's parents' house, for which they had received a search warrant. In a cabinet in the garage, they found the title for the old Crown Victoria car, the getaway car that Eric had purchased to use in the murder of Cynthia and Mike McClelland. And along with the title was a printout of the email correspondence between the seller and the buyer who had called himself Richard Green. That fit with the other evidence that the investigators had. In surveillance videos from the day the DA and his wife were murdered, they had captured a blurry image of a Crown Vic car coming and going from the area of the DA's house. These two big pieces of evidence was enough. Eric was arrested and brought in handcuffs to the sheriff's office. He refused to talk, and he was booked in the Kaufman County Jail, and his bond was set at $3 million. The investigators' next goal was to find Eric's weapons and the getaway car, but they had no idea where that was. Eric's arrest was made public on the local news, and when his friends from the Texas National Guard saw it, they came forward with what they knew about Eric Williams. One man reported that Eric had asked him to get rid of a special gun part, and another man had told the officers that he had helped Eric rent a storage unit. Eric had told him that the storage unit was going to be used by Kim's brother. Now the police knew where to search to find the evidence that they needed to fully prosecute Eric Williams for the murders of Mark Hasse and Mike McClelland and Cynthia McClelland. A search warrant was signed, and quickly the officers found the storage unit, and they were lifting the door to find the Crown Vic. Inside the storage unit was not only the getaway car, but Eric's gun arsenal. They would not find the actual murder weapons among the pile of guns that Eric had stored. However, one item which was connected to the murder weapon was found. In a bag in the storage unit, a gun cartridge with a bullet remaining in it matched the same marking as the casings found at the home of Mike McClelland. It was a firm link from that storage unit to the scene of the crime. And when the Crown Vic was analyzed further, inside they had found earplugs, and the DNA on the earplugs matched the DNA of Eric Williams. That DNA placed him in the car, and the car was the getaway vehicle that had driven to and from a double murder. One item that was found in the storage unit that was of particular interest to the investigators was an empty plastic Coke bottle. The investigators knew that that was a significant piece of evidence because earlier when they had searched Eric and Kim's home, they had also found there piles and piles of empty Coke bottles. And when Kim was questioned about that, she said that those Coke bottles were hers and that Eric never drank Coke. Finding the empty bottle in the storage unit meant that Kim Williams had been there as well, which meant she also had knowledge of the murder. Kim was immediately brought into the sheriff's office for an interview. She never asked for a lawyer, and about 5 hours later, she finally broke down, admitting to her part in planning the murders. She admitted that she knew about them, she knew about the planning, and she knew that they were executed as well. She also told the investigators that the next person on Eric's hit list was Judge Ashworth. Eric had planned to murder him the following week. In the state of Texas, whether Kim had actually been the one to pull the trigger in the murder did not matter. If the person had knowingly participated in the murder, even just in the planning stages, he or she was culpable as well. Even if she never left the getaway car like she said she had not, she could still be tried for murder. Kim Williams was arrested, and her bail was set at $10 million. In jail, Kim weaned off the heavy medications that she had been on to dull her pain from the arthritis she felt every day. She also continued to cooperate with the investigators, giving them any information that they needed, and she also filed for divorce from Eric Williams. Kim directed the investigators to the section of the lake where Eric had tossed the heavy black bag after the McClellands' murder. After several dive attempts, they found the black bag at the bottom of the lake, and inside were Eric's clothes from the Mark Hasse murder scene and 2 guns, both of which had spent bullets during Mark's murder. Eric Williams' trial started on December 1, 2014 at the Rockwall County Courthouse. The prosecution had decided to try Eric on the murders of Cynthia and Mike McClelland, not Mark Hasse. Eric Williams pled not guilty. The prosecutors laid out their case, and it was a strong one. The defense could not punch any holes in it whatsoever. At the close of the trial, the jury was asked to deliberate, and in 4 hours they had their verdict. Eric Williams was found guilty. In the punishment phase of the trial, the prosecutors were able to bring up the murder of Mark Hasse as well, as they believed that his murder should also be considered as the jury would decide the punishment for Eric Williams. On the 12th day of the trial, and at the very end of the penalty phase, Kim Williams took the stand. She described her relationship with Eric, her illnesses, and how she had become addicted to painkillers, and about her participation in the planning and the implementation of the 3 murders. The jury took more time than the time that they had needed for the verdict. This time, they took over a day to return their decision on Eric's punishment. He was to be sentenced to death. Unlike her husband Eric, Kim Williams pled guilty. She was sentenced to 40 years in prison, and before her punishment was laid out, she expressed great remorse for her part in the killings. As of October 2021, Eric Williams is incarcerated in the Polunsky unit of the Texas Department of Criminal Justice, and he is awaiting execution. The U.S. Supreme Court denied an appeal from Eric Williams on May 14, 2018. He filed a new appeal in August 2019. Kim Williams did not file an appeal. She sits in prison awaiting for the rest of her sentence to be complete. So here's what I think about this case. What a sad one. And forgive me if I look off to the side, because when I think about the case, I also write down my notes. And as I speak about my thoughts, I need to refer back to the notes a little bit. So forgive me if I look away. So, number one, it seems to me from researching this case that Eric was always a classic know-it-all growing up as a young boy and also into his adulthood. And I don't doubt that Eric was smart, and I don't doubt that he is smart. But he always seemed to me to be the type who let it be known that he always thought he was right. And the problem is that most of the time he probably was right. And I wish that wasn't the case for Eric. Unfortunately, because when that time came around when he was not right, and when he did something wrong, and then when he got caught, all those people that he had pissed off just relished the fact that they could now punish him. They all wanted to put Eric in his place, basically. The theft of the computer monitor was so minor that if he had just been able to own up to it and ask for forgiveness right away and sort of right his wrongs, I don't think it would have gone that far. I don't think he would have been punished so severely. And instead, he just doubled down. I mean, eventually he offered to pay the money back. He eventually offered to step away from his justice of the peace position, but I don't think the punishment of losing his law license was appropriate as a punishment for the crime. I just don't. And unfortunately, his need for revenge just overpowered everything in his life. And that's a very sad and a very scary place for a person to be in. And he became a monster. He really did. And it was just a cold-blooded thing to do. The amount of planning and the details that he had to go through to plan out those 3 murders, I mean, he deserves to be on death row. He really does. As for Kim, I think that she had so little interaction with other people besides Eric and her parents to some extent, that she just went along with whatever Eric wanted, really. He was her whole life. She was dependent upon him for money, for getting her groceries and other items that she needed to live. He would also, I'm sure, support her painkiller habit and her alcohol habits as well. And I think that I know that she wants people to believe that her addiction to the painkillers clouded her mind, and it kind of made her unaware, that she didn't realize what was going on, that she didn't realize that Eric was seriously planning these murders and that it was actually going to happen. And I'm not sure that that's true. I think she was alert enough and smart enough to know what was happening. She was also pissed, too, at the same people that had wronged Eric in his mind, because, in effect, when they wronged him, that also impacted her as well. So she was angry as well. And I think that when it got to the point where Eric was planning the possible murder of Cynthia, the prosecutor's wife, I think that's where she kind of drew the line. And Kim, when it got to her own trial, she pled guilty. She admitted her guilt, and she also expressed remorse, and I would hope that she felt the remorse as well. And she has continued to express that remorse to this day. However, it is amazing to me that as an accomplice to the murder of not one, but 2 prosecutors and a prosecutor's wife in the state of Texas, it's amazing that she only got 40 years, really. Now, Kim was an accomplice to her husband's planning of a murder, kind of similarly how Cindy Wilder was an accomplice to the murder that her husband, Richie Wilder Jr. committed. And if you didn't see me cover that case, that was my last video on my channel. And in that case, Cindy Wilder ended up being secretly recorded, and that evidence, that secret recording, was played in front of the jury. And I think that if they had some sort of a secret recording of Kim Williams speaking about the victims, maybe that would have caused things to turn out differently for Kim as well. Because I'm sure in private, in the privacy of her own home, Kim probably said some nasty things about Mark Hasse and Mike McClellan. So it's just interesting to think about that. The evidence that the jury gets to see and hear in a trial, that really determines how they decide their punishment. So, phew, this was a long video. Thanks so much for your patience while I covered it. Again, I would love to hear your thoughts on this case, so please type them down below in the comment box. I'd love to know what you think. As always, thank you for your time in watching this video. I know that your time is valuable, and I'm so glad that you chose to spend some of it listening to this story. If you liked it, I appreciate it if you click like, and if you really liked it, I hope that you come back for more. Until next time, everyone, I want to say that it was an honor to tell you the stories of the victims of these crimes. May their memory be a blessing to all who knew them and loved them. And until next time, everyone, please, please, take care. Bye-bye.